Grace Woods began her modelling career at the tender age of 15. Her stunning beauty and natural elegance soon attracted the attention of the Lucy Clayton Modelling School.
The agency was probably London's top model agency in the 1940s. You had to be a certain height, over 5'9". There was a specific model walk from the 1940s, far more straight, but to flow at the same time. Grace certainly would have had training in making sure that she didn't use her hands too much and her head didn't dip. She would have been told how to maintain a very still figure.
By the 1940s, Grace was a well-known face on the fashion scene and was photographed and filmed at prestigious events. The British fashion industry was starting to boom as designers shrugged off the drudgery of war in search of exciting new styles. And this design revolution required a new breed of model.
Grace must have had the similar training to me at her modelling school. And she would have learnt how to walk, how to wear the clothes, how to promote herself, in other words, really. And generally learn all the ins and outs of how to behave in front of a camera. And as a model, I mean, there was a lot more to it in those days.
Well, Grace certainly was a beautifully elegant model back in the day. I'm here at the Museum of London to find out more about the world she inhabited.
I've come to meet Beatrice Bellon, fashion curator and an expert in post-war fashion.
Hello, Beatrice.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. So tell me, what happened to the global fashion industry during the war?
Well, Paris was occupied by the Germans for about 4 years. So they were still producing fashion, but only for people sort of in Paris and in France. So normally they would have dominated fashion, they were leading fashion. So now the British and the Americans, they were developing their own styles and they were hoping that Paris could be kept down after the war.
And what did people wear at the time?
Well, I'll show you some things over here. I've got 3 dresses here, all 3 are worn about sort of 44, 45, and I think they maybe look a little bit like that, but this one I think you could definitely wear now.
Yeah.
So they're different, slightly different. This one is a utility dress, and you can see the CC41 sign here. It's made by a company called Bijou.
Right.
And utility means that it was made out of a fabric that was controlled by regulations.
So even fashion and material was regulated at the time?
Yes, it was.
In wartime Britain, clothes and materials to make them were as strictly rationed as food. The government had taken control of all imported cloth, and in 1941 brought in utility clothes for the general public. They set up a coupon system to ration how many new clothes people could actually buy. The utility label meant when consumers used their coupons and saw that mark, they'd know the clothes would be well made, hard-wearing and affordable. Unfortunately, clothes rationing didn't stop there.
There were also austerity regulations, and they governed how many buttons you could have, how many pleats, etc. So it makes you think there was just one style, but that's not true. You can actually make quite a lot of different styles despite the regulations.
Yeah.
Austerity measures aside, the public found ways around them, using what they already had at home.
This one here is made out of bedding material. She could do whatever she liked. So she got a pattern, she made this dress, and she thought, no, I'm not just going to have 4 buttons. I'm going to have whatever, 10, 9, or whatever she has here. So she used as many as she could get her hands on.
Yeah, it's amazing how bright they are. I sort of imagine
Yeah.
more clothing, and because of regulations, to be dark and drab.
No, I think the state was quite worried that people would hate it, so they did their best to have different patterns and things like that.
It's amazing to see firsthand just how inventive and resourceful people were in times of such austerity. Putting clothes made of bedding to one side for a moment, I want to find out more about how Grace became the superstar she was in her day.
So the UK, was that a good place for Grace to be modelling then after the war?
After the war, it would have been. There were still regulations for everyone else, but the designers were made exempt from the regulations, so they could make beautiful things for export, so that money would come into the country. So, of course, they would have needed models to show these new fashions.
It sounds as if Grace was in the right place at the right time. But what about the clothes she would have been wearing on the catwalks of America and Europe?
So from the silhouette, this would have been the kind of thing she would have modelled in 46. This is another utility garment. So what she would have worn for a designer would have probably been a bit more luxurious, but it would have had these wide shoulders and been quite straight, quite a boxy sort of look.
Yeah, amazing detail on here.
Yeah, but also this is a fake because, again, you have to not use that much fabric, so you don't put in proper pockets, you just have sort of fake pocket.
And were the public happy with the new styles?
The big thing that changed was when Dior had his first fashion show on the 12th of February 1947. And what he introduced was this new style, which you can see here. This is a beautiful suit by Hardy Amis, one of the big designers in London.
I love it.
Yeah, I think you could wear this now.
Yeah.
So this is sort of much more detailed. You've got different pockets, you know, more of a detail here than on the other side. You can see how much fabric these pleats would have needed.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't have done that under austerity regulations. Some people liked it, some people absolutely hated it. There were even debates in the House of Commons about this because it was using a lot of fabric. But you can't really fight fashion people. It was going that way and there was nothing people could do.
It appears Grace was walking the catwalks during a fashion revolution and subsequently became one of the world's first supermodels.
Now for British mannequin going to the States. Georgie Clifford, Grace Woods, Jane Lynch, Margaret Allworth...
In 1946, she led a team of models on a famous trip which showcased British style in America. The tour was set up by Grace's modelling agency.
The trip of the mannequins to New York was a very important part of Lucy Clayton's involvement. She saw an opportunity to take her girls over as ambassadors for British fashion. And the idea of this glamorous English woman travelling abroad with her girls, hand-selected, brought immediate American media attention.
Grace's glamorous look was so in vogue, it made her the British supermodel of her day.
I think the English market was very influenced by Hollywood in the 1930s. And if we think of those wonderful 1930s movies that were coming out of Hollywood, it was the beginning of Platinum Blonde. It was the beginning of quite curvy women. Records show that all of Lucy Clayton's original models had a life-changing experience when she scouted them out. I should imagine she loved every moment of it.
At the office, the race is now on to find heirs to the estate ahead of the competition.
We know it's above 5,000. Our indication is we think it may be up to about 20,000, 30,000, possibly higher, because we've done a lot more digging into the deceased life.
The team now believes Grace was born to William John Cook and Gertrude Johnson, and they're hoping the 1911 census will reveal her wider family.
Johnson and Cook as a surname is difficult for us because it's hard to identify. So it's just a case of like putting the name in and seeing if we come up lucky, but it doesn't seem to be happening.
The team urgently needs to find a marriage certificate which will identify the right parents.
Anything you can get will be most appreciated.
Birmingham-based researcher Paul Matthews is sent to nearby West Bromwich to get the proof.
Can we have that marriage, please? Of course. In 1919. We have on the express service. Yeah, I know there's an extra charge involved, but that's fine.
OK, not a problem, sir.
If it's held here, the certificate will be a vital link that will speed up the heir hunt.
OK, thank you very much indeed. I suppose you want me money as well. Thank you very much. This is the marriage of the deceased parents. The mother was Gertrude Johnson and the dad was William John Cook. He was 29, she was 22, bachelor spinster. Yeah, everything fits into place. So all we've got to do now is find Gertrude's brothers and sisters.
At the office, the team's now making progress finding heirs through Grace's mother, Gertrude Johnson.
Seven alive. Yeah. There were 7 children born, so that would mean that the deceased mother had 6 siblings.
They're finally starting to build an accurate family tree.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
The team's got names of Grace's 6 aunts and uncles. If they have living descendants, they'll be heirs.
It looks like we're making good progress. Certainly the tree's suddenly gone from a single page out to, what's this, 5 or 6 pages long. We've come down at least one generation, so we're dealing with cousins of the deceased.
One of Grace's uncles, Thomas Richard Johnson, married an Amy, and the couple lived in Birmingham. Paul Matthews is sent to another register office to find out if Thomas and Amy have any living descendants who would be heirs.
We've now got the deaths of Richard Johnson was an uncle of the deceased, but the actual informant on the second death, which was Amy in 1971, the informant was an Elizabeth Millicent Hill.
Elizabeth Millicent was actually Thomas and Amy's daughter and Grace's cousin. Elizabeth died in 1991, but she had 2 children, a son called Martin and a daughter Sharon. Paul's managed to find an address for Sharon in nearby Solihull.
She would have been born in 1947, so she's retirement age, so hopefully she'll be in and we can get hold of her and tell her all about this and get her signed up.
The team have invested many man-hours into this case, and it looks like they've finally found their first heir. The pressure's now on Paul to sign her up ahead of the competition.
Good afternoon, Paul Matthews, Fraser and Fraser. Basically, it's coming an estate we're dealing with, coming down through your late mother, and we think they're entitled relatives. So can you spare me half an hour?
Yes, I certainly.
OK, that's great. Thank you very much indeed.
A visit from the Heir Hunters has taken Sharon by surprise.
I bet you never thought we'd knock on your door then.
No, I didn't. Well, we knew that none of our relatives would have any money. Most of them have died paupers.
Well, so we don't know the value, so you might get a few bob out of it, so...
Well, you know, even 50 pence is better than nothing.
Paul needs to make sure that Sharon is in fact Grace Wood's first cousin once removed before she can make a claim.
Right, your dad's 4 names?
My father.
Yeah.
William Charles Kendall. 59.
Luckily, Sharon's able to provide the names of her relatives to help the heir hunt, and she recalls her distant cousin.
Was she very famous, or...?
Well, I think so. I don't know whether they used to call her Grace Darling or something like that because she was the darling of the Vogue magazine.
Sharon signs with the company, and in return for an agreed percentage, they'll help her claim her share of Grace's estate, currently estimated at £30,000.
First heir signed up. No sign of any competition so far, so obviously they all think there's no value to it, but we hope that our educated guesswork is correct.
A few weeks later, the Heir Hunters learn their hard work and the gamble have paid off.
A sample claim has been accepted by the Treasury solicitor, and it's only at this time we actually get to find out the real value of the estate. We were hoping for a value of between £30,000 and £50,000. Fingers crossed it may have been a bit more. We've actually heard that the value of this estate is £153,000. So 3 times what my top hope was, really.
It's a substantial estate, and in total it will be shared amongst 18 heirs.
That was a car he had when we were there.
For Sharon and her brother Martin, who's also an heir, the experience has stirred up memories of their famous relative.
The last time I saw Grace, I think I was about 7 years old. I remember her coming to my grandmother's house and being in the lounge, but I can remember looking at her thinking how beautiful she was. I mean, I was in awe of her because she wore the most beautiful clothes, and she was absolutely beautiful, and I made my mind up I wanted to be a fashion model too.
Martin also recalls that Grace had suffered from an illness.
I was told that during the war she'd had TB of the throat, and she had to have an operation to have the windpipe removed and replaced with a stainless steel tube. When we were there, when I saw her last, she had a big necklace round, sort of hiding her throat part.
In fact, Grace contracted TB while she was on her famous trip to New York. She was gravely ill, and although she recovered, it seems the tracheotomy put paid to her illustrious career. But for those who knew her, she remains an inspirational figure.
She was just a sweet lady, and she was a lady. You couldn't say she was a woman, she was a lady, she was elegant.
The thing that pleased me most was when she was telling me about her happy days as a model, and to reminisce about those days, I could see the pleasure in her face and the happiness it gave her to reflect on.